We're going to get started now. I think there were quite a few more people had booked on, but aren't here just at the minute. So there might be some more people joining us later on. I'll just give you a quick introduction. My name's Jo. I'm a percussionist. Originally trained as an orchestral percussionist, and at that time I was also doing lots of peripatetic teaching in schools, one-to-one teaching. And then I diverted a little bit and got really into different styles of folk music, traditional music from different places, and started playing things like congas, djembe, cajons, spoons, balafon. The balafon's a West African xylophone. And at a similar kind of time, I also then started doing more of my own workshops. Initially drumming workshops and then spoon playing workshops. But alongside all of this, I've done quite a bit of SEND work, and with all sorts of percussion really. So I'm not specifically trained, I guess, to work in SEND settings, but one or two of the projects that I've been involved in have had an element of training within that. A lot of the sessions that I do are one-offs, so I might go into a school for a day and just see a few classes throughout the day. I've been involved in a few other sort of longer projects as well, but a lot of what I do is one-offs. I've worked with all age groups. So really what I'm going to be talking to you about is just the kind of things that I do, the kind of things that I've found that work in these kind of settings. So I will be talking about drumming. We'll be looking at lots of different percussion instruments. I'm actually surrounded by percussion here. There's not much coming up on the screen for you, but there's quite a lot of things on the floor down here. There'll be a practical element. I know I can't see any of you, but if you would like to join in with some of the drumming, that would be great. If you want to put any comments in the chat, I'll try and keep an eye on the chat. Yeah, please do that if you want to. So there will be a sort of practical element to it. If you want to ask questions, that's great as well. If there's anyone here, I think there might be, who was here at the last session I did for Naimaz, which was about maybe 18 months ago, I think. There will be a little bit of a crossover, but there'll be a few different things as well. So the first thing I just wanted to talk about was how I tend to start my sessions. So if I'm set up in a space and the students are coming in, I tend to play either by myself or if I'm working with someone else. We tend to play music as people come in. And this is the instrument I tend to use. So this is a cajon. It's a strap-on cajon. So the standard cajon you may well have seen is a wooden box that you sit on and you play the front of it. This one's a slightly different shape. It's quite narrow at the top, a bit wider at the bottom, and I strap it around my waist. Looks a bit like an apron once it's on. So I tend to play very gently as people are coming into the space, and it tends to be quite a good way really to gauge how the group are going to respond to the music, whether they're going to be okay with the volume. Usually I go around inviting people just to have a go on the drum as well. Obviously that hasn't always been possible recently, but when it is possible, it's quite nice for people to have a little go on the drum. It actually feels quite nice. It's quite a sort of a smooth drum to touch, so it's quite a nice one to play. So we'll be playing as they come in. They'll have a little go on the drum possibly, and it's just, I tend to find it's a nice way just to start a session. It's a bit less formal, and you can kind of gauge where the students are at. Some of them might start dancing, some of them might start singing, clapping, moving to the music. So I was just going to mention actually, before I go any further, I mean obviously this drum has got a strap within it. I tend to like to move around the space when I'm running sessions. So if I'm playing, for example, the djembe, I've got another strap that I use. It actually looks like a car seatbelt, but it's got a little hook on the end. And it's great for djembe, and I've used it for other drums as well. So if anyone's interested, I can find the link and send that to you. But yeah, I tend to like to have instruments where I can move around the space. So something on a strap, or just handheld instruments as well. Okay. Do chat to me at any point if you want to. Just if anyone wants to unmute and say anything, please do, or put a message in the comments. That would be lovely. Okay. So once we've all settled in and maybe had a bit of a move, a bit of a drum, usually do a hello song. I think most people tend to use hello songs quite a lot. There was a song that I know that I used in the last Nimaz session, Haul Away. You may well know it. Away, haul away, we'll haul away together. Away, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Away, haul away, we'll haul for better weather. Away, haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Okay, so I've used that a lot in sessions, and I've actually started using it as a hello song in different ways. So okay, I'll answer that one in a minute. Thank you for the question. I'll come to that in a second. Okay, so the hello song, yeah, I quite often use Haul Away as a hello song now. So you'll notice that my name is at the end of this song. So sometimes maybe I'll put someone else's name at the end, and we'll go around and sing to everyone. Away, haul away, we'll haul away together. Away, haul away, we'll haul away, Jen. Away, haul away, we'll haul for better weather. Away, haul away, we'll haul away, Isla. So sometimes I might just use that and bring other people's names into it. Another thing, actually, I've used the same song with different words. So I tend to use songs quite a lot in these sessions. I think it's quite an important thing to do. I'm not really a singer, but I just feel that it's quite an important thing, particularly I think with younger children. So sometimes I might completely change the words. Hello, Amy, it's really good to see you. Hello, Amy, how are you today? Hello, Amy, it's really good to see you. Hello, Amy, how are you today? There you go. So there's an example of a hello song. Then we might get into some percussion. So I quite often use body percussion before getting the drums out. Again, it's a good way to kind of gauge where people are at. So maybe we could start, if you fancy joining in, you can do. We could do some body percussion without rhythm. So we could start, for example, creating a thunderstorm. So we've got the wind in the trees. And the rain starts. So tapping on knees. And then it all gets a little bit heavier, get feet going. Any other sounds? You could go on to drums at this point as well. And then revert back to where you started. So we can use body percussion in ways that don't actually incorporate rhythm. In terms of rhythm, I tend to pretty much always start actually with this kind of beat. It's one that people can latch on to, probably one that people recognise, and very often if people hear this beat they'll kind of launch into we will rock you, etc. So I find it's a kind of a good starting point actually for a lot of percussive stuff. Just this rhythm, we can try it with the feet and the clap. Stamp, stamp, clap, stamp, stamp, clap, stamp, stamp, clap, that kind of thing. We could do a quiet one with the chest, 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 clap, chest, chest, clap, chest, chest, clap. And then very often I'll do a bit of a drum roll on my knees and see if we can get people stopping. So this is a sort of an exercise to try and keep people's attention, see if we can start and stop at the same time as a group. So we might do some drum rolls on our knees and stop, and again and stop, and we could do quiet ones and stop, and obviously loud ones as well. So this is again quite a good gauge to see where the group are at, and try and get the group starting and stopping together. Sometimes people will shout start and stop, great. If someone's responding really well to it, maybe you can hand it over to them to lead as well. So that's quite a nice thing. So somebody else in the group is actually leading the starting and stopping themselves. So that's yeah, I like to do that. Okay, so drumming. I have no idea if anyone out there has got anything to drum on, but I'm hoping you might do. Anyone got a drum? If you haven't got a drum, if you've got something else you can play, that would be lovely. So we will do a bit of drumming in a minute. Before we do, I'm going to show you some djembes that I use in my sessions. These djembes, I discovered them a couple of years ago, and they're basically three djembes, different sizes, large, medium and small, that all stack inside each other. And I love them because they all go into one bag, so it feels like you're carrying less. They're very light, they're very colourful, they're orange, yellow and black, nice patterns on them, so people tend to like them. And also they can be a bit more robust than some of the traditional djembes. So the traditional djembe, they're goblet-shaped drums made from wood, and traditionally they would have goat skin on the top. So these are synthetic drums. And they tend to withstand a bit more battering actually than some of the traditional ones. So I use them a lot in my SEND work. I actually had a situation about a week ago that one of these drums was thrown across the room, and it's absolutely fine. Whereas I think if it had been a wooden one, it would have got broken. So I'm just unravel them and show you what we've got. So I'm not expecting you all to go out and buy lots of instruments after this, by the way, but it's just to give a few ideas. So this is the big one, and obviously the heads come off. So this is the big one. It actually sounds pretty good for a synthetic drum that comes apart. I'm not going to actually, it takes a while to get it back together, so I won't do that because I'm going to put them back inside in a minute. But yeah, it's a pretty good quality drum actually. Next one, here we go, goes inside. And the tiny one goes inside that, so they're all stackable. There you go. I'm not on commission for this. The other thing actually that I should point out is that because you've got 3 different sizes, it's great, you know, in these kind of workshops. You know, you might have someone who wants the big drum. You might have someone who wants a tiny drum. You know, it's really good to have different size drums available. So I would really recommend these. They're made by Meinl. Going for a cheaper option, I actually found some little hand drums, little frame drums, in a charity shop a little while ago, just for a couple of quid each. So you never know where you might find a drum. And these are really handy just for putting on laps and playing. So, yeah. I'm just going to go back actually before we do any drumming to answer the question. Lindsay said, is there a particular shop or website you can buy the straps from? Yes. In fact, I'll have to check that they've still got them. Well, in fact, I got a lot of my equipment from a company called Knock on Wood. So it's knockonwood.co.uk. I can put that in the chat. I think that's what it is. So yeah, a lot of my equipment has come from there. They've recently changed hands, so there might be some things might have changed since I bought some of my stuff. So I'm not absolutely sure, but I think they've still got quite a wide range of equipment there. So I would recommend looking there as a first point of call. But I can look some of these things up later. If there's anything particular that anyone's after, I can look them up and see if I can find links for them. Okay. So, another thing to mention about drumming, just before we do it, probably fairly obvious, is that obviously some students may not respond too well to the volume. It can be a bit overpowering when you've got a room full of drums. So it's just, obvious thing, but just to be aware of that. And generally, when I'm working in schools, staff are fairly on the case with ear defenders and in knowing who's going to be okay in the room at that point. But but also, I think it's really important to encourage people to play quietly. We don't have to play drums loudly all the time. I think people automatically think drums are loud, but actually we can play quietly too. So I'm going to grab, this is a djembe, another djembe. This is a wooden one. This is a more sort of traditional one. So it's made of wood, it's got goat skin on the top, sort of held on by rope. And one of the things I often do before playing in the group with the djembes is to actually feel the vibrations on the drum. I don't know, some of you might have done this already, but if you put your hand inside the end of the djembe, okay, so it is a hollow instrument. There you go. If you put your hand inside and play, you can feel the vibrations coming out the other end. And I do this quite often actually in my sessions, and people absolutely love it. It's really can be quite calming actually, even though the drum itself is quite loud sometimes. So very often I'll go around and invite people to just one at a time put their hand inside the drum and feel the vibrations. Sometimes people want to put their face up to the drum as well, which is great, but obviously, we have to be a bit careful. But yeah, it works really well, and I think it does have quite a calming effect too. So very often I'll do that before before we hand the drums out. One thing to mention about that actually is that if you do have access to djembes and you do try this, some of the traditional wooden djembes are quite splintery inside. This one isn't, but some of them are. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that before you do it. Okay, so right, if you're up for joining in, grab yourself something to play. So the way that I'm holding the drum, I know you won't be able to see it so much on Zoom now, but I'm resting it on the floor. Resting it on the floor, and I'm tipping the head away from me, and it just means that the sound can come out of the bottom, so it just gets a slightly bigger sound. So I will always play like that, or I'll have the drum on a strap. Depending on who you're working with, I mean, some of the older students will be okay sort of tipping the drum, but otherwise, in a group situation, I very often put them flat. Okay, so carrying on from the body percussion kind of thing, very often do some rolls to start off with, just some copying, starting and stopping. You might play. So I'm going to hold the drum up a bit higher actually. So in the middle of the drum, you've got a lower sound, and at the edge of the drum, you've got the higher sound. You may well know all this already. So we might do some copying, so we might do some rolls in the middle and the stops again, or rolls at the edges and stops. So a little bit of copying, stopping, starting, middle of the drum, edge of the drum. Okay, and then very often again I'll go into the "We Will Rock You" rhythm. I'm really hoping somebody's playing along behind those black screens. Okay, so I'm playing 2 beats in the middle and 1 at the edge. So you might have some people that are just playing 3 beats just in the same place. That's absolutely fine. So I tend to count this kind of rhythm in different ways. So if there are people playing the low and the high sounds, I might just go boom, boom, bat, boom, boom, bat, boom, boom, bat, boom, boom, bat. If it's more kind of 1, 2, 3, just on the same place in the drum, I might just count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. So I find different ways of vocalizing it depending on the group that I'm working with. Sometimes with, for example, with PMLD groups, it might be the staff playing the beat and the students feeling the air from underneath, or even, see, if I play the beat with one hand and put the other hand on, I can feel the vibrations there. So some students really love to just put their hand on the drum and not actually play, and just feel somebody else playing. So there are lots of different ways of using this, just this really simple beat, but just using it in different ways. So either with the 2 different sounds, or 1 sound, or staff or carer playing and the students kind of feeling the air or feeling the skin. Okay, so once we've got a beat like that going, I quite often do a call and response. So it's a bit like having a conversation. So, for example, depending on the group that I'm with, I might might do something vocally first without the instruments. So for example, I might say, "We are the drummers," and the response is, "Yes, we are. We are the drummers, yes, we are. We are the drummers, yes, we are. We are the drummers, yes, we are." Okay, that kind of thing. So then we'll put it onto the drums. So my part will be, "We are the drummers," and the response will be, "Yes, we are." And we'll do that a few times in succession to get used to that. So if anyone is playing out there, do join in with this. "We are the drummers, yes, we are. We are the drummers, yes, we are." My turn. "We are the drummers, yes, we are. We are the drummers, yes, we are." And then I might go back to the rhythm. So we'll be alternating our "We Will Rock You" rhythm. And then the call and response. "Yes, we are. We are the drummers. Yes, we are. We are the drummers. Yes, we are. We are the drummers. Yes, we are." And we might finish with a roll and a stop. So that could go on for a little while, just going between the beat and the call and response. Possibly using food. I quite like doing that one. So we could do a call and response that goes something like this. "What's for dinner?" And then someone in the group might want to suggest something that they've had for dinner. So it might be something like, "What's for dinner? Brussels sprouts. What's for dinner? Brussels sprouts," etc. So I'm sure some of you have done this kind of thing already, call and response. But it is, it's quite nice to encourage some of the group to suggest responses for something like that. Let's keep moving on, because I'm aware we haven't got lots of time. Okay. Something else that we could do with the drums or with other percussion. Can you play quietly, quietly, quietly? Can you play quietly on your drum? Can you play loudly, loudly, loudly? Can you play loudly on your drum? And then, can you play slowly, slowly, slowly? Can you play slowly on your drum? And then, of course, can you play very fast, very fast, very fast? Can you play very fast on your drum? So yeah, I think that's "Mary Had a Little Lamb," but just changing the words. But just songs about fast, slow, loud, soft, all that kind of thing is really good to use. Let me think what else we could do with drums before we move on to percussion. Oh yeah, this, I was just going to say, this beat actually, sometimes I'll do variations on that. So we might do. So we're turning the third beat into a clap, possibly. Or sometimes, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, we might say something else instead of 3. So we might say our names. Joe. A 1, 2, Joe. A 1, 2, Joe. A 1, 2, Joe. Or we could put something else on the end, maybe our favourite food. We're back to food again. So we could do something like a 1, 2, chocolate. A 1, 2, chocolate. A 1, 2, chocolate. And that could obviously develop into that depending on if the group was up for that. 1, 2, chocolate. 1, 2, chocolate. Okay. So lots of different variations with that rhythm and the call and responses. Just a couple of other things that I've done with drums before we move on to other percussion. One thing that we tried, in fact I tried with a group recently, we were sitting in a circle, everyone had a djembe, and we basically went round the circle, everyone playing one beat. So I'd play a beat, the person next to me would play a beat, and we'd go around. It's a bit like passing the beat. So we'd all play a beat around the room and try and kind of get a consistent-ish beat going around. Then if it worked, we could go faster or we could go a bit slower. We could try the other way around as well. So that's something we tried. Something else on a similar vein is to get solos. So I might play, pass it on to the next person who would do their own solo. So not copying, just everyone sort of does their own thing and we go round in a circle. And it's actually a really good exercise in being able to listen and not play when somebody else, when it's somebody else's turn. So I found that quite a useful exercise at times. So I play a little solo, someone else plays a little solo, the next person, and it really doesn't need to be anything flash at all, anything anyone wants to play, but it's actually the sitting quietly when it's not your turn that's the tricky bit. We've also tried with older groups having conversations, so in pairs, and maybe setting up a scenario. So you've got 2 people, each with a drum, and maybe imagine you're having an argument, for example. So the first person might go, and the next person might interrupt and do their little bit. Next person might interrupt. You could have a completely different scenario. So you're basically getting a conversation going between 2 people without words, but just using the drums. I hope that makes sense. I've also done a similar thing with smaller percussion as well. So basically taking it in turns, but sometimes if there's a scenario that you're thinking about at the time, it kind of helps a little bit. What else? Well, one other thing was we've done 2 parts. So we've had one group playing one rhythm and one group playing another rhythm at the same time. I'm just trying to think back. I did this the other day with a group, and we used food again, and I think there was something like chicken tikka, and I can't remember what else there was, but cheesy pasta, chicken tikka, chicken tikka. So if you're in a group where that could work, where you're using words, sometimes the words do really help, obviously, create the rhythms. So sometimes it can work to have 2 rhythms going at once using words of some sort. Most of what I've been talking about here, actually, I did do on Zoom as well. I don't know if any of you are still doing any Zoom workshops, Zoom sessions. I haven't done any for a while, but I think I did some at the beginning of the year. And quite a lot of this, I did do on Zoom. Obviously, feeling the air in the drum doesn't quite work, or kind of passing something around the circle doesn't work. But I did use quite a lot of these ideas on Zoom. Generally, when I've done Zoom workshops, I've used a lot more songs. Um, it's been a little bit less sort of focused on rhythms and sounds. I have done that, but I tend to use more songs. And then people have brought their own instruments or homemade instruments or household objects to play. So yeah. Okay. I'm very aware that I've been talking at you for quite a long time. If anyone wants to put anything else in the chat, then please do. Okay. Okay. Nothing at the moment. All right, I'm going to show you some other instruments that I've got here. I'll do this quite quickly. This is one of my favourite instruments to use for these sessions. If you haven't got one, I would highly recommend it. So it's called a wah-wah tube. It's a metal tube that you hit on the end with a softish stick, and then there's a hole that you move your thumb up and down over the hole, and you get that wah-wah sound. It's a bit like oh la 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 la. So that's the wah-wah tube, one of my favourites. I'm just showing you some of the slightly more obscure instruments, and it'll make sense possibly why in a minute. So another instrument I've got here is called a vibroslap. So I hit a little wooden ball on the top and it all vibrates, and then these little metal pegs move up and down in this kind of wooden casing underneath. Great sound, that. And then my flexitone. Might need to hold this a bit further from the microphone. So that's quite a strange sound, but another favourite. And then I'm just going to grab, I've got a tongue drum that I use as well. So this is a really nice, gentle sound. Okay, so I've just seen a couple of questions. Do I ever use backing tracks? I don't actually, no. I'm sure there are plenty of people who do. No, I tend to just take lots of instruments with me, and lots of instruments for the group to play, and use lots of songs as well. So I don't really use backing tracks. How do you use these cool instruments? Okay, I'm gonna show you a couple of things that I use these instruments for. So first thing, I've been doing a little bit of work recently with a local theatre company for learning disabled adults. And we've been exploring a little bit of sound and movement in different ways. But one of the things that I've done, or that we've done rather, is to, for example, one of us, myself to start with, plays an instrument, and everyone else moves in a way that they feel they should move to that sound. So I'm going to just come back to the drum briefly. So for example, if I was to just play something like that, you might just jig around, you might dance, you know, it tends to be quite high energy. If I was to do something like that, you might move slower, a bit more gentler. So I might start off with that, but then I might play this sound and say, okay, how do you think you could move to this sound? Okay, so we've had some really interesting kind of movements to that. I might then pick up the vibroslap and say, okay, how do you think you could move to this? Obviously, there's lots of kind of jumping up and down and sudden movements for the vibroslap. The flexotone. How would you move to the... I'm imagining that you're moving in the background there. I'm hoping you are. Okay, and then the tongue drum as well. That's a gentler sound. So we've used them in a way that I play an instrument and the group move to the sound that they hear. So it might be fast, it might be slow, it might be sudden. So it's about responding to the sound. Done quite a lot of that, which has been really lovely. Something else that we could do. I've got a poem here that I'm hoping you've been sent. I think you've been sent it. If you haven't, I'm just going to put the link in the chat in case you want it. Oh, there it is. Hang on a second. I think that should work. Okay, so something else that I've done with smaller percussion instruments, and this doesn't rely on you having lots of fancy, expensive instruments at all. I mean, you could just use sort of homemade instruments, be really creative with this. So I've been involved in a couple of projects where we've done things like use a poem, and we've created a soundscape for the poem. So this poem is called Autumn is Here. Autumn leaves, red, golden, brown, falling, swirling, drifting down. So have you got anything there? Have you got anything that could represent that first verse? So for example, I've got a shaker here, and if I swirl it, and I could move downwards, doing downward movements with that. I also quite often incorporate scarves, colourful scarves. So here we go. There's some autumn coloured scarves. So we could have someone moving with some scarves, and then we could have this kind of thing going on. So I might have a bag of instruments, and people can choose an instrument to play to represent what's happening in that verse. The second verse, prickly conkers, cracking, popping, branches snap, acorns dropping. So the other day I think we used this one. We also used these. And again, you could have some movement going on as well. What have we got next? Picking pumpkins, juicy apples too, gathering blackberries in hedgerows for you. Well, I have got, I should do shaky, I've got some shaky fruit and vegetables. So we've got shaky pumpkin and a shaky apple. But obviously you don't need to have those. You can create other sounds. You maybe create some crunching sounds. What's the next one? Foggy mornings, damp, cold and grey, nature's blanket clouding the day. So for me, this kind of sounds like maybe more metallic sounds, kind of cold, damp, dreary. What have I got here? Actually, that might be maybe the tongue drum. Hang on. Or maybe with the other end of the stick even. So finding sounds that kind of fit with each part of the poem. Possibly this one would fit damp and cold So this is an ocean drum. You could make one of these with a tub with some rice or something in it. There we go. Where are we? Swallows gather, swooping up high. Off they go, to Africa they fly. Well, there's a reference to Africa there. So when we've done this before, we've sort of come back to the African drumming. We could have some bird sounds in there. I've actually got a little thing here that... There we go. Hibernating hedgehog. Find somewhere to sleep. Be sure it's not your bonfire or your rubbish heap. So maybe we could create a bonfire. So we could have some kind of crackling sounds. Lots of sort of random drumming. We could come back to the scarves again. Create some kind of bonfire with red, yellow, orange scarves. Shorter days, frosty and wet. Winter's round the corner, but not quite yet. I think one time we did this, we actually really did get into winter, and we got the bells out and went into Jingle Bells possibly. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of possibly how you could use a poem. I mean, it's not, you know, it's fairly basic, but it's just quite nice to find specific sounds, create a soundscape to go with a poem or a story. Use a story as well. Right, we haven't got very long left. I could talk forever about percussion. I'm just seeing if there's what else. Oh, I was going to show you my spoons. Let's finish off with the spoons because they're really good. So okay, there we go. So I do spoons workshops in mainstream schools quite a lot, but these spoons are really good for my SEND work. So they are joined up spoons. These are metal spoons with a little wooden handle on the end. You literally hold the handle, and then we can go back to our rhythm again. We can do all sorts of rhythms. You can go from leg to leg. If you put your hand, or rather put your spoons over your leg, other hand over the top, we can move up and down. So experimenting with different ways of playing the spoons. We can do a little roll, like a little drum roll. So if you spread your fingers on the other hand, point your spoons at your fingers and run the spoons down your fingers and hit your leg at the bottom, you get a little drum roll. So they're the metal ones. And there are also some wooden ones. There we go. Okay, so that's my spoons. There are other things I could talk to you about, but I'm aware we've kind of almost run out of time. But just to say that I do usually finish the session with something quite gentle, quite calm. That may be the tongue drum that I showed you earlier. Sometimes I'll come back to the wah-wah tube. And one of the things that I love to do with this, and only if the students are okay with it, but if you play it kind of, I guess, reasonably close, not too close to somebody's ear, and then move it over their head. And I think it's a really strange sensation, but on the whole, people love it, and it's a really kind of calming thing. Not everybody, obviously, so you have to be mindful of that. But I find it's quite often a really lovely way to finish a session. Okay. I'm going to stop talking now and just see if there are any final questions. And also, if there is there anything that anyone would like me to send? Is there any links to anything or anything that I've spoken about? Anything you'd like me to send, basically. Do you want to either unmute or put a message in the chat? Anything at all? No. Are you still there? Hopefully. Okay, I can't see any questions, but please let me know if there's anything that I can send you, anything that will be useful. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope some of that was useful. It was a very quick whistle-stop tour of some of my percussion and drumming and what I do with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was great. I'm sure there's tons of ideas that people can put into practice there. So, yeah, thank you so much. If anybody, as Joe says, wants to ask any questions, please do. Joe, I can see there are a couple of comments in the chat. They may just be thank yous, but please feel free to put anything in the chat that you'd like.
Bryony said she wants a wah-wah tube. They are the best. If you've got a little bit of money to spend on just one instrument, I would really recommend the wah-wah tube. It's brilliant. Okay, I don't think there are any other questions. I think I've answered the one.